Hi, this is Robert Donohue with my 2025 Capstone project. The project is about poker analysis for online poker games. So, in summary, it's a web app that I built to analyze poker games from the website pokernow.club. So, this is a free online poker website with hundreds of thousands of users. And it allows users to download these logs that are automatically generated in the form of CSV files that basically just track everything that happens in the poker game. Um, so the goal of this app is to allow users to upload these logs to a website and then perform analysis on them to provide them with key statistics about their play and the play of other players in the game. And if you're not familiar with poker, it's not super important to understand this project, but basically, statistics in poker are very similar to any statistic you would find in sports. Um, so I was motivated to build this because as a PokerNow user myself, I find this app to be really useful. It's always important to analyze your poker games in order to improve. Um, and because this website has hundreds of thousands of users, there is a big potential target audience of people who would actually benefit from this. For technical stuff, the project is written mostly in Python, and it uses Flask as a framework to allow it to be deployed as a web app, because obviously Python is not by default made for making web apps. And then because it is a web app, I also have to have a front end, so that's just written in HTML and CSS. It's pretty simple. And then I host it for free on the website pythonanywhere.com. So I'm going to provide you with a demo. First, I'll show you my GitHub to show off my folder structure and just show you what the code looks like. And then I'll show you the main page of the web app and give you an analysis, a demo of the analysis. Um, I'll show you how you can download CSV files from the website so you can export data that basically just provides you with a matrix of different poker statistics for different players in the game. And then I'll show you my admin page, which requires authentication to log into, and it just shows you all the logs that get uploaded by users of the website. So let's go to my GitHub now. Okay, so this is my repository for my Capstone project. This file right here is the core of what runs the app. So you can see it is a Flask app. And basically what this does is it just calls a bunch of these functions um, that I define in my analysis folder that I'll show you in a second. But so for example, it calls track player presence, which is a function that tells you how many hands each player participated in. Or get action counts calls tells you, with this variable calls here, it tells you how many times each player called, which is something you can do in poker if you're not familiar. It's just an action you can take. It tells you how many times they called throughout the entire game. So I'll show you. So all of these functions, or most of them, are defined in within the poker analysis folder in this file called stats.py. Um, yeah, so this is really the brunt of the project, is building these functions to analyze data that we get from the CSV files that players upload to the website. Um, so just an important one is this first one, get action counts, shows you, it'll count the number of specific actions taken in a game. So you call it with varying words for this argument action. So for example, if you call it with, say here, if you call it with calls, it'll return the total number of calls for each player. If you call it with raises, it'll return the total number of raises for each player. And then we use functions like this to calculate more advanced statistics such as aggression factor. So aggression factor depends on number of bets, number of raises, number of calls, and then player dict is just a dictionary that contains all the players in the game and their names. And we use these, which are calculated with this function. We use these numbers to determine an aggression factor, which is just like a key poker statistic. It's a ratio of your bets and raises divided by your calls, and it basically tells you how aggressive or passive a player is. Um, Often it's thought of as better to have a higher aggression factor, but um, just a couple more things. Plots.py takes all the statistics and turns them into nice charts and graphs with matplotlib, so you'll see those in a second. Um, Matrix.py is the function that exports all of this, or it builds a matrix to be exported that just like gives you all this data that you can download when you use the website. Um, and then that's all the analysis. In my templates folder is the front end. So again, this is really simple, but you can just see there's some CSS here, and here's my HTML. Really simple. Um, there's not much decoration because it's about statistics. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. It doesn't need to look super pretty, but I think it looks all right. Okay, so here is the actual website. So you can go to this URL. I'll include it in my email, um, and it should be live. It's not just locally hosted. So you go here, and it basically does nothing until you upload a file. So you can hover over browse, and it'll say, please select the file. Um, And also, if you want to use this website, you're going to need a file that's the right format, and you can get one of those at my GitHub. So here's the Capstone folder. Um, Within this poker logs folder, there's a sample file that you can upload. So you can actually test this out yourself. So again, if you go to browse, I'm going to upload the sample file from the GitHub. So I'll select that, I'll hit analyze. It should take like 5 seconds. And here it is. So I'll come back to this download button, but this just shows you the results of your analysis. So you have the player names running along the bottom, and then each graph is basically a different stat. So this graph shows you aggression factor um, for each player. So you can see some players, like you can see Cal and DLA have aggression factors, pretty high aggression factors, so they're more aggressive players. That means they bet and raise more than they call. Whereas Jad and Thor have lower ones. Some more charts. This just shows number of calls, number of raises, number of bets, number of folds. So these are sort of less critical, but they're used to build these other stats like aggression factor. Here's a scatter plot that I've created that shows VPIP versus PFR. So VPIP just measures it. It stands for voluntary participation in pot, which means the percentage of hands that a player uh, plays. So basically, if you have a higher VPIP, like group over here, it means you play a lot of hands. So this player plays like 73, 72% of hands. Um, Whereas someone like Cal plays about 33%. Um, and then it has running along the y-axis is pre-flop raise percentage, which means the percentage of times you raise in the first round of betting. So if this is higher, you're more aggressive, and if this is farther to the right, you play more hands. Here's another one. This one is still a VPIP along the bottom, but it's aggression factor on the y-axis. So again, being higher means you're more aggressive. So these are actually very similar charts, just a slightly different statistic. And then finally, we have this chart that shows the amount of money or the stacks of each player over time. So if you want to follow a particular player, you can follow DLA, he's orange. You can see he starts around $75. He loses everything on like the third hand, goes to zero. He probably buys back in for 100. It's relatively flat. He loses, he wins, he loses, he presumably adds on here. He wins a bit, and he comes out with a win, although I think overall he doesn't take profit because he bought in a couple times. Another player, Joshi, was the highest performing player in this game. He also started around 75, and he's down a little bit, and then just has this huge upswing. Loses a bit here. He loses some money to this purple line, Brook. You can see how when he goes up, or when Joshi goes down, Brook goes up, so you can see these kind of line up. Um, but he makes it back, and he ends up with the largest stack in the game, over $300. And you'll see that he is the most profitable player in this particular game also. And you can see that in this analysis matrix. So I'm going to download this and open this CSV file. And this is a matrix that shows you the stats in a very definite form. So you have players on the left as rows and their stats as columns. So I was saying Josh, he's the most profitable player in the game, and that's true. You can see he profited 217. Um, Cal lost the most, he lost 263. And if you add these up, I do think they sum to zero, which they're supposed to. So that just tells you that basically it's working correctly. And also, just to verify, let's just check that these stats line up with our charts. So like Brook has an aggression factor of just about 1. So let's check that. Yeah, so slightly over 1.02 I think he had. You can see this is quite close. Or like DLA 1.57, yeah, just below 1.6. So these are lining up, which is good. So that's the main page that a player would be using to analyze their game. And then there's also an admin page. So I'll take you to that. You just put an admin in the URL, and I'm going to put in something incorrect here, and it didn't work, so we can't log in. But if I put in admin and password, which is just hard-coded here for the demo, we get this, which just shows you all of the logs that have been uploaded by users and gives you timestamps. The times are in Greenwich Mean Time, so they don't line up with the actual time. But if you can change that if you want. It would be pretty easy, I think. Anyway, I'll show you that this actually gets updated. So this is just the random test log that I created. So it's called 00AA test. We're going to hit analyze, and you can see it's not in here. See, I just made this myself. It's just Alice and Bob. But we're going to refresh the page. There it is. And the timestamp, again, the hour's off, but 10:14. You can see the minute is right. It's just a different time zone. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. If you're gonna, again, if you want to test this out yourself, you're gonna need one of these CSV files that it accepts, and that is obtained on my GitHub in the Capstone folder, which I'll send you this link within poker logs, and so you would download this file and then upload it here. Thank you very much.